Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Nishcast. I'm the Diggly Doodah Doc, Mr. Slippers, the Papatoe Panther, and I'm joined by the Wildcard today to talk through a Blackcaps test squad for their test series against Sri Lanka, over in Sri Lanka. Also is the start of the Test Championship. So me and the Wildcard are going to talk through those talking points, which there doesn't feel like there are a whole lot of talking points, but we'll find something to discuss from that Blackcaps test squad. Support the Niche Cache as best you can. You're listening to this, so that's a beautiful way to support the Niche Cache and the Niche Cast. Otherwise, we've got a Patreon page that you can jump into. We're going to be recording podcasts just for our patrons, so sign up to Patreon. You will get access to a little bit of extra bonus content. Otherwise, just like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, just to let us know that our work is appreciated. You know, we just like to feel appreciated. Wildcard, which of these four Blackcaps spinners are you most excited to see in action over in Sri Lanka?
Ooh, big question straight up. I'm gonna go with Mr. William Somerville, the eldest of the quartet, and a guy who I remember saying on a podcast, a few months ago that I took the unders on him never playing another test match in his career. So I'll be happy to be proven wrong, because I actually think he's a guy who, with a little bit of the variation there, being the one guy who turns it into the right-handers, and against the Sri Lankan team, which often has a few lefties up the top of the order, I think he's a guy who could be very useful in this series. So glad to see you back in there, Willie. At the expense of my own dignity.
Yeah, you and me both. So that's the main thing from this Blackcaps test squad, is the four spinners selected to go to spin conditions. Otherwise, test squad isn't all that exciting. Like, it's just the group of test cricketers that we have seen in action for Aotearoa for the past 12 to 24 months. So we'll just keep on that spinning discussion, because there isn't really a whole lot else to talk about. I do have a few other ideas that I wrote about today, but does four spinners just seem like excessive to you?
I mean, if you consider that Kane Williamson is also a guy who might get a few overs under his belt over these two tests, then maybe, but I mean, I understand it. Like, it's a series where it's going to be dry, dusty wickets, as it always is in Sri Lanka, and you want to be able to take the pace off the ball if that's the case. And yeah, like, the obvious thing to say looking at the squad is, well, I think there's probably three people who can feel the most upset that they haven't been picked. One is Ish Sodhi. I'll come back to him in a sec, because he is of the five, guys on the test fringes that we have, he's the one who didn't make the squad. But the other two being Matt Henry, obviously, who is normally there or thereabouts, and then Lockie Ferguson. Both seamers, both guys who both guys who look better with a little bit of pace and a little bit of the ball nipping around a bit. And I mean, Fergo, I think, could have been useful in these conditions, but most likely Neil Wagner is already going to be performing the role he would have been doing, so he can wait for his first test cap a couple more months. Henry just wouldn't, like, we've seen Matt Henry, he's hot and cold in all forms of cricket. He is exceptional when the ball is doing, when there's just a little bit of juice in the wicket. That's not going to be the case in Sri Lanka. So I think even Tim Southee is going to struggle to play both of these test matches if conditions aren't exactly right there, if there isn't a bit of rain in the atmosphere or something like that. So Matt Henry just, what's he going to go over there and carry the drinks? It just makes sense to have the extra spinning option, who you might be more likely to actually use in these conditions. So I don't know that four is excessive, especially if you look at, like, okay, Ferguson deserves a go at the test arena. He was best bowler probably at the World Cup, and he has been doing the business at Plunket Shield level for a long time now, and probably deserved it regardless of what he did at the World Cup. Like, yes, he deserves a go, but he's going to get a go. Like, later on in the summer, we got, 3 tests in Australia, I think, and we got 2 against England at home, 2 against India at home. Those are going to be seam bowling conditions in every one of them. We're not going to be picking 4 spinners in those for those series. So he's going to get a go later on. Matt Henry's going to get a go later on. The only guy who maybe should feel bit upset at not being picked here is Ish Sodhi because he's the fifth of 5 spinners and we've only picked 4. But like, just in terms of what they've been doing recently, in terms of how they've been picking the squads, he is the fifth option, and whether he deserves to be, okay, that's a fair debate, but the other 4 have all played more recently, and they are more, well, not more recently, but only because Santner was injured. Like, they all, in terms of depth charts, in terms of how the selections have been going, they are all the incumbents ahead of him. So I think it's fair enough, and I think they're going to get their use of 4 spinners over the course of it. You sort of can split them into 2 pairs as well. You've got Astle and Santner competing for an all-rounder spinner sort of role, and then you've got Ajaz Patel and Will Somerville looking at more of a straight spinner option, batting at like 10 or 11. So, you know, I can see, I see the logic in it. I don't think it's too dramatic. It's not very New Zealand cricket, is it? But it makes sense enough to me.
Yeah, so you kind of took the idea and ran with it. You did a little marathon there. But so just to bring it back to the back around, you mentioned players that I had wrote about as being, and this is the idea I do want to talk to you about in a jiffy, is the depth available to Aotearoa to ride the wave of the Test Championship. So I'll save that for I'm going to unleash on you, Wildcard, with that, and I'll do my own little marathon. But you mentioned the seam bowlers, where I was thinking more in specific regards to Ish Sodhi and maybe someone like Will Young. So 4 spinners to me feels a bit excessive, and like you, I'm not angry at it. Those guys are all among the best spinners in Aotearoa. They're all capable of performing at the Test level. But if you got 4 spinners, someone isn't going to play. And it's just been my belief over time, you are well aware of this, that I want to prepare players for success in the future. And so if you're taking 4 spinners to subcontinent conditions and 3 of those spinners are at least 30 years of age, why not just bring a younger spinner who has more upside? He doesn't need to play because one of those spinners isn't going to play. You're not going to play 4 frontline spinners. That's a bit crazy. As funky as we like to be at the niche cage, that is a bit crazy and not really an option. So if you've got a spinner on the sidelines, you might as well have Ish Sodhi as that spinner and just keep him in the system. Keep him there as part of the Test squad because he is the spinner with the most upside in New Zealand. And so I just find it a bit, you know, if I was selecting the squad, I would have selected Ish Sodhi ahead of one of those older spinners, and you got a Will Somerville, Ajaz Patel. They don't really deserve to be dropped. Mitchell Santner's come in. I'll just select Ish Sodhi over Todd Astle, not because Ish Sodhi's a better bowler, but because that extra spinner position is just a squad member, and that person, I would just rather give that spot to someone with more upside and someone who is going to benefit from the experience and prepare them for a steadier future in Test cricket. Alternatively, I would have Will Young there ahead of, like you mentioned, the seamers. I'm thinking about Will Young, and I'm thinking Will Young's the next best batsman in Aotearoa. If there's a injury or unavailability during this Test Championship, in the number 3, 4, 5, 6 kind of roles, Will Young's the next best batsman, as we saw last summer. He unfortunately didn't make his Test debut, but he was meant to. And so I want Will Young around the group. I want Will Young to experience a Test series. He doesn't need to play, just to experience a Test series in Sri Lanka. These are ideas on how you build a group of cricketers. These are how you develop cricketers, and this isn't anything new for New Zealand cricket in how they don't best prepare cricketers for success in the hardest environment there is cricket-wise.
Yeah, do we know if Will Young is back fully fit yet? Because I know he what was it? He had a shoulder reconstruction or something, after that New Zealand A tour, and that was why he was unavailable for the World Cup, although he had already not been picked. But like, was he available for selection? He must be, he must be close to recovery by now.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it doesn't even matter because he's not gonna The whole thing is just about getting these guys to be around the group and experience what it's like to tour Sri Lanka. And you gotta, you look at what the All Blacks do. They bring in those younger players to be part of the experience. They integrate players into the All Blacks group, let them experience the culture, the standards that the All Blacks require as one of the greatest sports teams ever to exist on this planet. And then those players move through the levels of All Blacks footy. They might come off the bench against Japan, then they might start a game against Samoa, and then suddenly 2 years later they are starting against South Africa, England, France, Australia. But that starts with the All Blacks bringing players in to experience the culture, experience the standards of what is required to contribute at that level, and then learn from the coaches, the players around them, get better, develop, and then you throw them to the wolves of international sport. And that level of planning and preparation and development is not quite there with the Blackcaps.
Yeah, I will say I think there's let's give it about a 90% chance he makes his Test debut over the summer, because there are a lot of, this is, 9 Test matches over the next 6 months. It's bloody lovely times to be a Blackcaps Test cricket follower. So there will be opportunities for guys down the line, and this tour happens to be the one opportunity where the spinners get a go. They've taken 15 players. I don't know why they couldn't have just taken an extra spare batsman. You might need it. I don't know what I'm going based off memory here, but based on games in Sri Lanka in the past, I don't think you're going to be getting those sort of 350 to 400 scores. You're either going to be getting like 250 or 450 plus. So either you're going to be in there, batting for a long time and having to cash in which case you want your batsmen around, or you need strike bowlers, or you're going to be, taking lots of wickets, in which case runs are difficult to come by and you might need more batsmen. So I don't know. It's hard to say because it's been a while since we played a Test match.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's why
go for it.
And this flows into what I'm talking about with the Test Championship, because as you mentioned, there's a whole lot more games in this Test Championship, and so the reason there haven't been a whole lot of changes in the Blackcaps Test team is because they play 2 tests, 3 tests, and then they have a couple months off, and then they play another 2 tests, 3 test series, so there isn't the attrition levels. Players aren't really getting injured. Players don't play enough Test cricket to be in and out of form. And so that natural variation, that natural rotation that comes when you are playing consistent Test cricket hasn't been there. So I do believe, like you, I think guys like Will Young, Ish Sodhi, Jimmy Neesham, Matt Henry, Lockie Ferguson, over the next 12 months, they will play Test cricket for New Zealand. Because there's going to be a need for rotation. There's going to be a need for different players coming in and out. That's why the depth of New Zealand cricket is so important. But if you're talking about players contributing later on in the Test Championship, maybe a series against Australia, and you might need a batsman, that's why you give Will Young the taste of Test cricket experience again, so he is best prepared for when his opportunity does come. But then there's 15 players in this Test squad now. I just named 5 other players. So Will Young, Ish Sodhi, Matt Henry, Lockie Ferguson and Jimmy Neesham. That's 20 cricketers who I believe can contribute at Test level. And then there's another tier below that of talented guys who could step into more development roles that the Sodhi, Young, Neesham, Henry type of level guys are currently in, depending on what happens in the Plunket Shield this summer and who's in form. But that's at least 20 cricketers who can contribute to the Test team. And when we flow back into that idea of playing more Test cricket and having more injuries, having more natural variation and rotation, I think the expectations for the Blackcaps should be pretty high in this Test Championship, because they've got a lot of bases covered. We've got 4 spinners in one Test squad. We've got another spinner who could be in the Test squad. We've got seam bowlers coming out of our backsides. We've got a talented young batsman who could do a job. when required. Even at the opener level, you've got someone like Greg Hay, who has consistently averaged over 40 pretty much in every Plunket Shield campaign of the last 4 or 5 years, and he could come in to do a job, one test here, one test there, a series here, a series there, if Jeet Raval or Tom Latham is injured. So there's enough depth for the Blackcaps to deal with all sorts of different situations, different conditions, different opposition, and I believe that this is going to be a huge factor for the Blackcaps in how successful they could be at the Test Championship.
So injuries are one thing, like injuries might happen along the way, and also you get situations where conditions determine which, like the makeup of your side, and that's where you get alterations. I'm wondering, looking at the squad, like who might actually be in danger of dropping out for form reasons, though. And like you said, pretty much hammer on the head of the nail there. Like, we just don't play enough test matches for guys to be under extended pressure in terms of run scoring and stuff like that. I mean, Jeet Raval has yet to score a test match century, but he does tend to grind away some nice runs, so I don't know if he's under much pressure. The rest of our top four is pretty well established and not likely to change. Henry Nichols scores solid runs at 5. You know, he scores tough runs against good teams too, and we're going to need that going to Australia in particular, so I don't really see him dropping out. I guess a guy who might be under some pressure is Colin de Gronholm, although I actually think this tour to Sri Lanka is a great tour for him, because we're likely to see slow decks, and we're likely to see either, you know, big scores or quite little scores. Either way, those are two situations where Colin de Gronholm is very good. Coming in when the team is like 400 for 5, you know, anyone's going to enjoy that situation. That is perfect. We've seen him do this before, come and pummel the ball around, or coming in where runs are cheap, and maybe being able to blast 40 off 30 balls might actually be a bit of a difference maker in the momentum of the test match. So, and obviously he's gonna be a bit of a factor. I wouldn't be shocked to see him opening the bowling, in fact, in these conditions, considering that we might want the extra spinner, and if that's the case, a seam bowler has to drop out. We've seen in recent times that's more likely to be Tim Southey than Neil Wagner. But either way, like, that probably pushes de Gronholm up into more of a factor. So I think I think he's in line for a good series here. If he doesn't have one, then maybe there's a bit of pressure on him. Southey is maybe a guy who could be under some pressure. I'm going to throw out the guy who I think is under the most pressure of any of these guys to do something. We've picked 4 spinners, and the most established one of those 4 spinners is the youngest one. But I think Mitchell Santner is, if I'm picking a test squad from these guys, and I'm looking at who I want, like, I'm saying, okay, someone has to miss out. Like you said, we're not picking 4 spinners here, especially not with Williamson as an alternative option. 3 maximum. And I reckon we are looking at them in 2 little duos here, the all-rounding spinners and the spinners. I don't know. I think Todd Astle, they've shown a lot of faith in Todd Astle, which hasn't always been justified. But in head-to-head against Mitchell Santner in Test match cricket, I kind of prefer the leg spinning option, to be honest. And their batting is negligible. I don't think there's enough difference between either of them. Santner has a Test average of 25, I think, with the bats. So nothing that should determine, like, nothing that's going to force him to bat in the top 6, or nothing that makes him deserve to bat in the top 6. So I don't know. I think Mitchell Santner might be the fella under the most pressure of any of these fellas.
I am going to reserve judgment on who I believe is under the most pressure. I can see agree with you. I want to take that idea and put it in a bigger picture context, because I think there's pressure on the Blackcaps. They, regardless of being away and playing in Sri Lankan conditions, so basically Test cricket, whoever's playing at home is the favourite, and they, given the variance in conditions, you should win Test matches at home, as we have seen with the Blackcaps playing in Aotearoa. But I think the Blackcaps are the better team. I think they have the better players, and they have the tools to be able to be successful in Sri Lanka. And I think the Blackcaps should win this Test series against Sri Lanka in Sri Lanka. And if they don't, I think it's going to put them under a little bit of pressure moving forward in this Test Championship. That's why I'm so intrigued as to the performances of the individuals and whoever is selected in teams and stuff like that, and how that contributes to the performance of the team, because I do believe the Blackcaps should be favourites and they should win this Test series. In saying that, it's going to be a difficult, niggly challenge because you're playing against Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, you can select as many spinners as you want, but those spinners are coming up against Sri Lankan batsmen who know how to play spin. Like it's that idea is a bit strange. Like you go to a country and yeah, conditions suit playing spinners, or if you come to New Zealand, conditions suit selecting medium pacers, but you're basically doing exactly what the other team wants you to do. So it's just a weird kind of paradox where we're selecting a whole lot of spinners to bowl against batsmen who love batting against spin bowling. Those Sri Lankan batsmen don't like facing seam bowlers in New Zealand, and then if Trent Boult can utilise his skills, Neil Wagner utilise his skills in Sri Lankan conditions, I reckon that's going to be more challenging to Sri Lankan batsmen than facing another. Ajaz Patel is pretty much a Rangana Herath clone. Left armour, chunky, shortish body stature. And Will Somerville, he's just another off spinner. Yeah, he's good, he's got experience, but he's nothing really different to what Sri Lanka faced. Todd Astle, there's a whole lot of Todd Astles in Sri Lanka. Mitchell Santner, he just flights it in. Like, there's nothing really unique about any of these spinners. And so Sri Lanka could benefit from that, but I think ultimately the Blackcaps should win this Test series. They should be favourites going into it, and that just sets things up. There's a little bit of pressure there. Spots are up for grabs because you're going to play. There's that natural variation, natural rotation. You go to Australia, different conditions, so it's a interesting challenge wild card coming off the back of the World Cup, and I think a lot of people would be expecting the Blackcaps to be successful in Sri Lanka. And I think the Blackcaps are confident that they can go to Sri Lanka with 4 spinners and, ambush Sri Lanka in their own conditions at their own style of cricket. And I'm just, wary of that. I'm just interested, intrigued, enticed by this Test series. Like, it's not too often, wildcard, that a Test series against Sri Lanka really tickles my taste buds. But the context around this series against Sri Lanka has me, rather excited.
Well, that's the beauty of the new Test Championship, isn't it? Because it's not just every series, but every Test match has relevance now, because every Test match has points on the line. And the points are dished out specifically based on the results of each game. Done in a way as well on a scale so that there's there's 120 points maximum if you sweep a series, regardless of how many tests there are. So if there's 5 tests in a series, it's 24 points for a win, 8 for a draw, none for a loss. If there's 2 tests in a series, which is what the Blackcaps are quite used to, then we're looking at 60 points for a win. So 60 plus 60, 120, sweep the series, we get maximum points to start off with. But as you say, very, 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 very much easier said than done. And this is the trick, because it doesn't take much to even the last time we played Sri Lanka was here, and Angelo Matthews and someone else, I forget who, batted all day to take us into the rain and save a Test match, and what should have been a win turned into a draw because we weren't able to get that last wicket there. And over in Sri Lanka it's obviously going to be tougher, but yeah, this is why I love the Test match championship now, because there's so much on the line here, and the way it's worked out, there's a very stupid aspect to this Test championship, which is all down to India's fault, because India refuses to play Pakistan, which means that everyone else has to shift things around that. And the way they've done that is that there are 2 teams that each nation won't face over the 2 years of the Test championship. So, 9 teams all up, 8 oppositions, but you play 3 home series, 3 away series. So there are 2 teams you don't have to meet up against. For us, it's actually worked out incredibly well. which is why I think the Blackcaps have a great chance. I won't say to win this Test championship, but to make the final. Yeah, they got a great chance to make the final here at in 2 years' time at Lords. Another grand final at Lords. That'll sort of be some demons to exercise if that comes around to pass. But yeah, the two teams we don't face are England and South Africa. Two teams who are very good and we might struggle against. We do all right against England, to be fair, generally, but South Africa certainly are a team who would give us some difficulties. And our 3 away series, this is the first of them against Sri Lanka. The second is against Australia later in the year, and then next August, I think, we go to Bangladesh. So Bangladesh away, that's very tough. We've had trouble with them before, but it's better than South Africa away. It's better than India away, and Sri Lanka here is a great way to chance because, like you say, we should win these tests if we play to a high standard. If we get great performances from the holy triumvirate of Williamson, Taylor, Bolt, we can win these tests and be off to a great start in the Test Championship. However, we could also, have a couple bad days that could cost us dearly. And as everyone's getting used to this Test Championship and realizing how much could be on the line for each game and how it's you can't take your eye off the ball and all that, and suddenly we get a loss and a draw or something like that, and our Test Championship things are looking pretty dicey from the very beginning before we've hardly even started. So it really is actually quite there's a lot on the line for this series. It's a pretty important series for the Blackcaps to be able to get up and running and putting some points on the board in this Test Championship as everyone's getting used to what it's going to take to do well in this thing.
I wasn't aware, Wildcard, that 3 T20s were part of the Test Championship.
I don't know where all the... Well, that's because there's a World Cup next year, but it's not till October. I don't know why there's so much 2020 cricket.
Alrighty, so the first test starts on August 14th. We are recording this on the 31st of July. There is a warm-up game on a 3-dayer on August 8th. And then first test starts on August 14th. So we may do another little preview podcast of that test series or integrate it into some other cricketing discussions because there are a whole lot of contracted domestic player lists. So all the provinces have basically sorted out their squads. I have written about the Auckland Aces and Central District Stags. So before that Blackcaps Test series against Sri Lanka in Sri Lanka, we will probably roll out a few provincial cricket, domestic cricket. I don't know why I said provincial. It's all about domestic cricket here at the Niche Cache. And we might just roll through a few preview podcasts for those domestic cricket teams and squads and just discuss a few bits and pieces from those squads. So keep an eye on those ones if you do love domestic cricket. Always exciting to be doing a whole lot of cricket content, international cricket, domestic cricket. That's what the Niche Cache hangs our hat on. So that's what we're here to do. Otherwise, Wildcard, any final Blackcaps cricketing matter ideas?
Well, we just talked heaps about Test cricket and then a little bit at the end about how many 2020s they got coming up. The Blackcaps don't play another ODI until February. The World Cup runners-up Blackcaps, who everyone loves for the way they play ODI cricket, no ODIs until February.
To be honest, Wildcard, fuck ODI cricket right now.
I know. We've had enough of that for a while.
I want to see some Test cricket, and then the thing about T20 international cricket, I'm not the biggest fan, but I am a fan of T20 international cricket when there's a big tournament that is on the horizon. If there's no big tournament, there's no World T20 tournament. T20 international cricket is the most meaningless bullshit in existence. But suddenly we have a World T20, and now I'm interested. Now I can see a World T20 Blackcaps team taking form and what players are going to feature and how the Blackcaps are going to operate. All of that is very interesting. So I am fairly excited for those 3 T20s, although not overly excited. But, whatever. Test cricket, Blackcaps, that's what we're here for. Kia kaha, stay beautiful, and stay tuned for that Patreon podcast. If you are listening to this and you are a Niche Cache patron, Keep an eye on the Patreon feed. Otherwise, we may share these first few episodes with the wider public just to, lure them into getting a Patreon little pledge and, just showing them what we do and all that good stuff. Kia kaha. Bye-bye.